My dear friends, in a world where doubt is the native tongue, and dreams are often sacrificed at the altar of mediocrity, I say to you, be crazy enough to believe that you deserve it all, not in the sense of worldly greed, but in the divine sense of God's original intention for your life. For we are not created for dust, but for destiny, not for ashes, but for glory. The saints were called madmen by the world, and yet it was their divine madness that changed the world. So today, let us embrace that holy insanity, the unshakable conviction that God has written greatness into your soul. The world often teaches us to measure our value by fleeting things, our productivity, appearance, or the approval of others. But before you were born, before you ever accomplished or failed at anything, you were already infinitely valuable. Why? Because your worth is not earned, it is bestowed by the one who created you. You bear the imprint of the divine. You are not mass-produced. You are handcrafted by God, made in His image and likeness. Think of it. The same God who commands galaxies into motion looked upon the void and chose to bring you into existence. You are not an accident of biology or a random event in time. You were willed, deliberately, lovingly, eternally. When the world says you are not enough, remember this. The Creator of all things thought the universe was incomplete without your soul in it. That is not poetic exaggeration. It is theology. You are worth more than you can fathom, because the price paid for you was not silver or gold, but the very blood of Christ, and God does not die for trash. He dies for treasure. So do not insult heaven by doubting your value. You are more than a name, more than a job title, more than your past mistakes or future fears. You are an eternal being with divine fingerprints all over your soul. Walk like it, speak like it, dream like it, because to believe in your God, given worth is not pride, it is truth. Desire, when rooted in love and goodness, is not something to be suppressed or distrusted. It is something to be understood. It is not random. It is not meaningless. It is, in fact, one of the most profound signs that you were made for something beyond yourself. When a person feels a deep, burning longing for purpose, for love, for greatness, that desire is not insanity. It is eternity whispering through the soul. God does not plant dreams in your heart to mock you. He does not stir your soul only to leave you empty. He gives desire the way a compass gives direction. That restlessness, that ache for more, is not weakness. It is evidence that you are not yet fully home. It is a divine invitation to rise beyond the ordinary and to pursue the extraordinary life God uniquely designed for you. Now, the world will tell you to be realistic. But realism without faith is just resignation with better branding. The saints, the prophets, the visionaries, they were not realistic by the world's standards. They were fools for God. They followed a fire within that no logic could explain and no crowd could validate. And that same divine spark burns in you. Desire is not about selfish ambition when it flows from the soul seeking God's purpose. It is about alignment, your heart catching up to what heaven already knows. Your holy desires are often heaven's way of reminding you, there is more. Keep going. So don't apologize for dreaming. Don't shrink to fit a version of life that others expect of you. The dreams that won't let you sleep, the hopes that return no matter how many times you bury them, these are not curses. These are callings. They are spiritual signals pointing you toward the person you were created to become. To desire is to trust that God is not done with you. And if God is not done, why should you be? The cross is not a contradiction to the promises of God. It is the clearest clue to how those promises are fulfilled. At first glance, it seems backward. It looks like failure, defeat, humiliation. How can a symbol of suffering lead to glory? How can a dying man, nailed between criminals, be the hope of the world? And yet, it is precisely there, on that rough wooden beam, that the mystery of life begins to make sense. The cross does not cancel out the goodness of God, it reveals it, not in comfort, but in sacrifice. Not in ease, but in endurance. For if the very Son of God was not spared suffering, why should we expect to live without it? More importantly, why should we fear it? Suffering is not proof that God has abandoned you. It is often the very evidence that He is near, that He is preparing something deeper, purer, more lasting within you. You see, God is not only interested in making your life successful. He is interested in making your soul strong, eternal, radiant. And nothing forms the soul like the weight of the cross. In the economy of heaven, pain is never wasted. Every tear you have shed in faith becomes a seed. Every hardship endured with trust becomes a chisel shaping your character. The cross teaches us that the path to resurrection always runs through Calvary. There is no crown without the thorns. There is no rising without the falling. And when you carry your own cross, not just once, but daily, you are not being punished. You are being partnered with Christ in the greatest love story ever told. The world tells us to avoid pain at all costs. Run from it, numb it, deny it. But the cross says, embrace it, not as your enemy, but as your teacher. It teaches us patience. It teaches us compassion. It teaches us to look beyond ourselves and lean on the one who carried it first and best. When you suffer, you are not stepping out of God's will. You may be stepping right into the heart of it. The cross is not a detour. It is the road. And when you walk it with faith, you begin to see that it is not the end. It is the beginning of everything beautiful. Look at the saints. Look at anyone who has lived with true joy, depth, and love. Without exception, they have all known suffering, but they didn't let it harden them. They let it hollow them out, so that more of God could fill the space. So if you find yourself in a season of hardship, do not curse the burden. Look again, the cross is not a contradiction. It is a clue, a divine clue that something holy is being born in you. It is God's strange and sacred way of preparing you for something far greater than comfort, transformation. You are not being broken apart. You are being broken open, and what God will pour into that space will not just bless you. It will bless the world through you. Mediocrity is not harmless. It is not neutral. It is not a safe, modest middle ground between pride and failure. No, mediocrity is a quiet betrayal, a subtle but deadly sin against your calling. It is when the soul, born for greatness, settles for survival. When the heart, built to burn with divine fire, accepts lukewarmness as a lifestyle. It is the slow erosion of purpose, disguised as prudence. And though it rarely makes noise, it often causes the greatest tragedies, lives unlived, gifts unused, and destinies postponed indefinitely. You are not made in the image of a mediocre God. The Creator who fashioned the mountains, who dotted the night sky with stars and stretched oceans between continents, did not form you in hesitation. He did not breathe His Spirit into you so you could live halfway. Every part of you, your mind, your heart, your voice, your talents, was designed to reflect His glory. And yet, how often do we hide, play small, and talk ourselves out of what God has already equipped us to do? The truth is, mediocrity offends heaven, not because God is disappointed in your progress, but because He is heartbroken when you forget who you are. It is not humility to settle. It is fear wrapped in religious language. False modesty that says, "Who am I to aim higher?" But perhaps the better question is, who am I not to when God Himself has called me? When Jesus said, "You are the light of the world," He did not follow it up with, "So keep your brightness low." He did not say, "Dim yourself to fit in." He said, "Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." Your brilliance, your effort, your striving toward excellence, these are not acts of vanity. They are acts of worship. You shine not for your own fame, but for His name. What the world needs now is not more experts or entertainers or influencers. What it needs are people fully alive, people who have refused to drown in the shallow waters of mediocrity and have dared to launch into the deep. People who believe that if God put a calling on their life, then God will also provide the grace to fulfill it, completely, boldly, and beautifully. Do not confuse busyness with purpose. You can be active and still aimless. You can be applauded and still empty. But when you live with holy intention, when you rise each day and say, God, I will not waste what you've given me, then even your smallest actions carry eternal weight. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Stop looking for permission. Stop rehearsing your limitations. The world will always try to convince you that good enough is enough, but heaven knows otherwise. Heaven knows what you were born for, and deep down, so do you. So reject mediocrity, not in pride, but in faith. Say no to the smallness that keeps you stuck. Say yes to the stretch, the discomfort, the growth. Because every time you rise above average, you honor the God who made you for more. You were not meant to survive. You were meant to soar. Faith is not a feeling, nor is it a vague optimism about the future. Faith is a force. It is the invisible bridge between the promise and the fulfillment, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It is the currency of the impossible, what you spend when the price of your calling exceeds your resources, your strength, your logic. It is what moves mountains, not because the believer is strong, but because the one in whom they believe is limitless. There is a reason Christ spoke so often about faith, not because he wanted us to merely believe in pleasant ideas, but because he knew that nothing in the kingdom is accessed without it. Faith is the key that opens locked doors, the seed that births miracles, the boldness that stares down impossibility and says, move. Where reason reaches its end, faith begins its work. And the greatest tragedy is not that people face impossible situations. It is that they face them without faith. We often wait for signs to believe. But in the language of God, belief is what precedes the signs. Faith is not passive. It does not sit quietly, hoping for things to improve. It acts. It obeys. It steps out when everything in the natural says, don't. It builds the ark before there's a drop of rain. It marches around Jericho while the walls still stand. It lifts the knife on the mountain, trusting that the Lord will provide. To the world, this looks like madness, but to heaven, it is the deepest kind of wisdom, to trust not in what is seen, but in the one who sees all. Faith does not ignore the facts. It simply believes that God is not limited by them. Every person God has ever used significantly has walked by faith, not certainty, not comfort, not clarity, faith. Abraham left his homeland not knowing where he was going. Moses stood before the sea, rod in hand, before it ever parted. Mary said yes to an angel, risking her reputation and her future, simply because she believed that with God nothing is impossible. So what about you? What are you facing that feels too big, too far, too late? What dream have you buried because logic told you to give up? The same God who split seas and raised the dead is still at work, and the currency he honors has not changed. It is not intellect, it is not status, it is not performance, it is faith. When you operate in faith, you stop measuring your situation by what's in your hands and start measuring it by what's in God's heart. You stop calculating your capacity and start trusting his character. Faith says, I don't know how, but I know who. And that one word, who, makes all the difference. Don't wait until everything makes sense. Don't delay until you feel ready. God doesn't need your perfection. He needs your participation. He doesn't require your strength. He asks for your surrender. And when you offer that, no matter how small, he multiplies it. Because what faith touches, heaven empowers. You may not feel qualified. You may not feel prepared, but if you have faith, even faith the size of a mustard seed, then you already have what God needs to work the impossible in your life. Faith is not just believing for a miracle. Sometimes faith is the miracle, faith that endures the storm, faith that waits when nothing changes, faith that sings in the prison cell, trusts in the fire, and clings to God in the silence. So hold fast, believe boldly, speak what God has promised even when your voice shakes, because in the kingdom of God, faith is never wasted, and it is always enough. So I say unto you, be crazy enough to believe that you deserve it all, not in the shallow, selfish way of the world, but in the sacred confidence of a child who knows their Father is the King of heaven. For those who dare to believe, truly believe, the impossible becomes inevitable. God love you.